Under our Constitution, who is given the primary responsibility in administering elections in the United States? Is it the federal government of the states?
The states.
And this principle is enshrined in Article 1, Section 4, commonly referred to as the Election Clause, correct?
That is correct.
So why did our founding fathers give states this primary responsibility?
The Founding Fathers gave that responsibility to the states because each state is responsible for how they appoint electors, how members of Congress are elected. Ultimately, the membership is decided up here, but at the individual states, they know best how to manage those elections.
So what are the benefits of 50 different state election systems that a one-size-fits-all federal system cannot afford?
Well, there's no benefit to a one-size-fits-all, given all of the complications. Having worked at the Secretary of State's office in Texas and managed elections, Texas has 254 counties. Some people vote on machines, some people vote on paper. There are a lot of things that go into that Congress could never take into account, and I think it's why it's important that y'all have passed this ACE Act to kind of reset where the governance of elections happens.
Much of the campaign finance law, as I found out, is very complex and convoluted and involves a lot of unnecessary paperwork, in my opinion, as well, and with all due respect, a lot of expensive lawyers. Can you just briefly explain why spending money on political activities qualifies as protected speech under the First Amendment?
Oh, well, the United States Supreme Court has decided that early on after the commission was created that the dollars that are spent equal political speech. And so everything that we deal with at the commission, because it deals with the campaign finance issues, touches on that First Amendment aspect.
So let me just give one example. Wouldn't we all recognize the obvious First Amendment problem if Congress restricts how much money the Washington Post or the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal could spend?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question.
I mean, wouldn't we, if we recognize the obvious First Amendment problem, if Congress would somehow restrict how much money the Washington Post, the New York Times, or the Wall Street Journal could actually spend?
Oh, very clearly that would be a violation of the First Amendment.
So with this in mind, why is it so difficult for people to understand the same obvious principle when it's applied to political campaigns?
Ultimately, it's a function of actually what Commissioner Dickerson testified to. It's the hodgepodge that the Federal Election Campaign Act has become because the courts have nullified so many provisions within it that it actually it's something that needs to be reset and looked at and have provisions that are still on the books taken out so that an average citizen could look at that and say, here's what I can and cannot do with regard to that. And ultimately, it comes down to whether or not really the only thing we need to police is whether or not there's a corrupting influence of money. That's the only thing that we need to be policing.
All right, well, I appreciate and I appreciate all of you guys sitting here today and testifying. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Mr.